today, which is right after Jürgen de Smet, which is talking about scaling, is yet another talk about scaling. But this one is beyond frameworks. So let me first quickly introduce myself. That's a close enough picture to me today. So this is a soonish picture. I've founded a consulting company. I'm a certified Scrum trainer. I do give lectures at university, at the major universities, business schools in Barcelona, Spain. And I did a PhD in artificial intelligence, which is way cooler now than it was when I did it. So, yeah. And management development, scaling certifications. I've done most of the scaling certifications. Actually, I was a student of Jürgen in a last training that he did in Barcelona, which I'm very grateful for. Bunch of companies I worked with where I've tried a lot of the things that I'll be explaining right now. Okay, so there's a really good book I would recommend you all read on scaling by Bas Bode and Cray Larman, Scaling Lean and Agile Development. And they start the book with this quote here. Our key recommendation, after working for some years in the domain of large multi-site and offshore development, we have distilled our experience and advice down to the following. Does anybody know what comes next? Don't do it. Like the key book about scaling tells you at the beginning, if you can avoid it, don't do it. And then they say, well, there are better ways to build large-scale systems than with many developers in many places. Rather build a small group of great developers and other talents that can work together in teams, pay them well, and keep them together in one place. I think the one place thing after COVID was kind of removed from the book. We all learned how to work in different places and collaborate remotely, etc. But the idea is have one team of great developers, pay them well, and you won't need to scale. So why would we do this? Why do we keep on scaling? Scaling is like a big thing. Everybody wants to scale. I understand why you want to scale the business, make more money, sell to more people, provide more value to the world, but why do we need to scale our operations? There are two main reasons, really. The first one is too much cognitive load. Try to find a group of 7 people that can build a Boeing 747 from scratch. It's not going to happen. And even if you did find 7 people that could have all the knowledge in their head to build such a complex product, it took them so long to build that knowledge that they're going to retire in a couple of years. So it's not very sustainable for very complex systems to have one single team. You need to get enough heads so that they can wrap around the problem that they're trying to solve. What's the other one? Market pressure. I mean, nowadays, with all the platforms that are being built, there's a lot of business models that are winner takes all. So if you're not faster than the competition, they're going to end up taking your piece of the market, and there's not going to be market for everyone. So you want to be faster than the other ones, and even though it might not be very efficient, you're willing to hire a bunch of people just to be faster. Okay? We are willing to sacrifice efficiency because we need to be first. Those are the two reasons. There's really not much more. I don't know. Can anybody come up with something other than these two for why you would really need to scale? To look cool. To put it on the CV. Yeah. Release train engineer. We all love that one. Okay. You've all seen Cynefin before, right? So what problem is scaling? Where are we? Are we on the predictable side, the ordered side, or is scaling an unordered and non-predictable problem? What do you think? This point on the right direction, is it ordered or unordered? Unordered, right? So it's a complex problem that we can't tell in advance how many people we're going to need, what teams we're going to need, in what order to put them. Therefore, we have a solution. Anybody recognize this one? Yeah, that's a safe implementation roadmap. You follow this linear path, and you'll solve your complex problem. That doesn't make sense, though. We can't expect to solve a complex problem with a linear solution. I think the basis of the problem is that we want scaling, but we are sold scaled. We want a problem that is ongoing, evolving, emergent. We want a solution to this kind of problem, which is ongoing. And we get a picture of what a scaled thing would look like. And we expect this to solve that, and it doesn't work. So, why not go back to the basics? Deming cycle. I know it's old. Over a century now, I think. And what does it say? The complex problems have to be solved by iterations of small, incremental solutions. Wait a minute. This is just Agile. Why not use Agile to scale Agile? If scaling is a complex problem, and we know Agile is a set of tools, set of practices that allow us to solve complex problems, why not use Agile to scale Agile? So how would that work? What are our problems? Anybody want to brainstorm problems that get worse with scale? Sorry? I thought I heard something. Am I hearing voices? Going too quickly, if you're scaled, you go even more quickly, and that's a problem?
They judge it wrong.
Okay. Oh, they scale too fast, so like overshooting. Okay. And the bigger the scale, the easier it is to overshoot. Okay. What else? What? Span of control. What do you mean by that?
There are so many teams with scale, so many teams that you have to control.
Oh, so like actually knowing what's happening and controlling the outcomes gets more difficult the more people I have and the bigger the teams. I think I saw a hand over there. Communication gets harder, right? You've all seen the drawing. You have 2 people, 1 communication line. 3 people, now it's 2. 4 people, it's 6. And it gets worse and worse. It's quadratic. So that gets definitely worse with scale. Change. What do you mean? Change management, right? Managing changes. Because change gets easier. There's a lot more people to do changes. But if you want them to all be aligned, that gets hard. Let me just give you a quick picture. There's a bunch of stuff that gets harder and harder. Process improvement, change management was mentioned, identifying bottlenecks, everything related to people. The more people I have, the harder it gets. Hiring, firing, onboarding, training, coaching, all of this now require programs to manage all of this stuff. But remember, let's go back to the basics. What are we trying to do? Why did we hire all these people? We want them to deliver value for our customers, right? So, theory of constraints. Anybody know theory of constraints here? You should all. If you don't, read the book, The Goal. Definitely worth a read. Okay, so we want to find where our bottlenecks are, our restrictions in the system that don't allow us to provide value. And then we manage those. We try to remove all the problems and improve our either throughput or time to market being reduced. I'm not going to get into details about that because I only have 30 minutes. I just want to give a lot of stuff out for you. Food for thought. Value stream mapping. I remember I had a client once. They were doing something similar to SAFe, okay? And they had the typical 3-month delivery cycle. And they were saying, we want the developers to go faster because we need to be faster and our clients need to be satisfied sooner. So I did that exercise with their pipeline for delivering features. It was taking them from the moment we had an idea about something they wanted to build all the way to when the developers had something that they, like the refinement phase, all of that, was taking 2.5 years. Then they did a 3-month development process, and then from having a new version to that being delivered to all the clients all over the world, which they did with CDs. Took another 2.5 years. And I looked at that and I said, why do you want to optimize the 3 months in the middle when you have 5 years lead time from idea to production? We're solving the wrong problem. Putting more teams to do development won't solve that. Okay, So what is the approach that I'm proposing here for you? Principle-led and principle-informed, pattern-led. It's a bunch of P's. So let me go into what they each mean. Principles. Okay, you need to define what are the principles that you want to base your decisions when scaling. And each scaling framework has their own principles. So you have less over there, no, over there. You have scaled, agile framework over here. You have goals, which is another group of people that are coming up with principles and patterns that you could use for guiding your scaling efforts. Remember, if we're going to be using Agile to scale Agile, we're going to end up having some sort of backlog of things we want to try out, experiments to run, see which work, which doesn't work, and how to prioritize that. Well, I recommend you use some sort of value stream mapping. Oops, not here. You use some value stream mapping to see what are your areas where you're losing efficiencies. And define which principles are aligned with your company culture. Because if you just grab any set of these randomly and they're not aligned with your company culture, it's not going to work. Your company's going to push back. The culture of your company is going to eat your strategy for breakfast. I didn't come up with that. Somebody else did. Okay. So then let's get into patterns. We've all heard about patterns. I mean, we've all seen these two books, haven't we? Okay, I don't recommend you read them. They're a bit dry. But they're sources of ideas that we can use when solving complex problems. The first one, Pattern Language by Christopher Alexander, that's for people doing buildings and organizing landscapes. The one on the left, yes, is for software. Okay? So we should do the same thing for scaling. And there are actually groups of people trying to document all of these. But since they're not done, and I don't think they'll ever be done because all these patterns will be evolving. This is a complex problem. We're never going to find the solution. So where do we go finding sources of patterns that we can use in our scaling efforts? There you have a bunch of frameworks. You have LESS, Discipline Agile, SAFe, Unfixed, Scrum at Scale, FAST, Spotify, GoEls. There's other groups of people that have been documenting patterns, the Scrum Plop website, for example. So go there, look for ideas. It doesn't mean they're going to work, because for any problem, you're going to have multiple types of patterns, or multiple patterns that can help you. For example, in the previous slide, I showed team synchronization. That's a problem that you might have that gets worse with scale. So what can we do about it? Well, the people from Scrum at Scale came up with the scaled daily Scrum. That's a pattern. We could try it out, see if it works. If it works, push it to the rest of the teams. If it doesn't work, try something else. Or we could have a common definition of ready and definition of done for all the teams so that we can know that any team that grabs something from the backlog is ready for one team, is ready for another team. So any team refining it can be implemented by any team, and we know that any team implements it to the definition of done, it's good enough. That's another way. Or we can have sprint synchronization. All teams do synchronized sprints that start and finish on the same day. That makes easier coordination across teams that have dependencies. Which one is best? It depends. It depends on your context, so you need to be able to evaluate this. This is not easy, but it's going to work way better than just putting in whatever framework says that we should be doing without thinking about context. Another set of patterns. So planning is also a problem. How do we plan when we have multiple teams? Well, SAFe proposes the program board for multiple sprints. We put strings, rows for each of the teams, etc. We could have a rolling wave planning. So we're all planning the next sprint to much detail, and we're planning the next 5 sprints to less detail, and we're planning the next year to very high detail. You could mix this up with OKRs, etc., etc. Or we could have the less approach to sprint planning. Pick. Whichever looks best for you, try it out, do an experiment, then get data out of it and see what works. If it works, continue doing it. If it doesn't work, try something different. But you have to be careful. There are patterns out there or things that have been tried or that are commonly thought as a good idea that might be a bad idea for you. So that's why I'm saying, just because other people are doing it doesn't mean it's good. It has to work for you. And it's all about context. If we're each looking at a specific part of the problem and nobody's looking at the whole, we might be over-optimizing for local optima. And we want to find solutions that work for us as a company. So whether it's a pattern or anti-pattern will depend on the context. And I'd like to introduce another concept in there, which is what we're calling the scaffold. A scaffold from the construction point of view is a set of structures that we put around the building to secure it so that we can make big changes to the building without it falling apart. Scaffold is basically temporary structures that we use to modify a system security. And we're pretty used to seeing scaffolds in construction, and I'm pretty sure you know about scaffolds in the medical industry. Here you have 3 examples. Not only do I like playing didgeridoo, but as Jürgen and others around, I like extreme sports, and I tend to break bones. So I've been in that situation quite a few times. That's a scaffold. It's not, they put it on you for some months, it helps the bone heal, and once it's healed, mostly, they remove it. So anybody has broken a bone, can you tell what happens after? Yeah, you have. What happens after they take off the cast? It's weak and smelly. Yeah. Okay, so it's the same thing that's going to happen when we use the concept of scaffolds in companies. If you want to change things in the structure of your organization, you have to think that some of the patterns that you'll be putting in place now might become constrictive in the future, and you're going to have to remove them. And it's a good idea to explain that this thing that we're doing now, it's temporary, because we're just going to learn something that once we've learned it, we're going to remove the scaffold and continue. But people get used to the scaffold. And when they take it off, it's like, I feel so weak. Well, maybe I need to have this on for a couple of more weeks. But that's not what we should be doing. Examples of scaffolds. Okay, let's start with the Agile Center of Excellence. Great on the CV. Once people get into an Agile Excellence Center, they don't want to leave because it looks good on my CV, it's going to get me promotions, et cetera, et cetera. But what this means is that teams are not enough. They need external coaching, external excellence center to teach them all of these things. If this becomes ingrained in the organization, then teams are not going to be autonomous. Another example, I think the program increment in SAFe is a great idea for some companies. Okay. Nobody's throwing tomatoes? I think it's a great idea. I've used it a few times as a way to get companies that have a really bad dependency management going on, and they really have a bad time planning into the future. I start doing that, but I tell them, like, we're going to be doing this for a few quarters, and once you're good at this, we're going to start removing it. So don't get too used to it, because it's a big investment, and then it has other problems. Another example, the component owner. Anybody has seen that in the company? Come on, you're lying. Okay, we've done this. We have a team that is specialized in some difficult subsystem. We even have names for this now, like, what is it? Complex subsystem team. And we have someone in there that prioritizes work for this team, and we call them, it's not a product owner, it's a component owner. It's not ideal, but somebody needs to do it at first. When will this stop? Once we've delegated or we've given all the knowledge to other teams, this team becomes unnecessary, then the role of the component owner becomes unnecessary. But if that person gets, like, if the person that is the component owner isn't told from the beginning this is temporary, then they'll try to latch on to that role, they'll try to make themselves necessary, and then you'll never remove the cast. Okay. So, just a quick summary. Why would we scale? Too much cognitive load or a lot of market pressure to be first. If you're not in one of these situations, try not to scale. just spend your money on better team members that can do it without having to scale to multiple people. If you have to scale, try following a principle-informed, pattern-led approach. Maybe a framework is for you, but make sure that you're choosing a framework because it's aligned with your culture and because the set of patterns that's asking you to put in place at the beginning look like they're going to work out. Otherwise, I mean, try things. Be promiscuous with frameworks. Don't tell that to my wife. And last but not least, remember, some of these patterns that you'll be using are scaffolds. They're not meant to be there forever if you want to maintain an increased agility in the long term. Some of these things are great casts that will let you fix some problems, but unless you remove them, you'll never get past a certain amount of agility. If you identify these, let people know that they're part of an experiment that is a scaffold and that will be removed. Otherwise, people will tend to try to maintain those new roles in their CV as long as possible. It's a complex problem, therefore it needs dynamic solutions. And all of this that I've explained is work that I've been working on with other certified Scrum trainers from the Scrum Alliance, and it's part of the Certified Agile Skills Scaling course. Go find one if this is interesting. There's a lot more stuff to learn. I couldn't, in 30 minutes, give you everything.